Hey guys, what is up? Welcome to the channel. I appreciate you being here as always. I've got another Bridgestone ball review for you today. This one is the E12 Contact. So this is another lineup in the E12 market that Bridgestone has offered over the last few years. They've had the E12 Speed, they've had the E12 Contact, they have the E12 Soft. So it really feels like they're trying to find what direction they want to go in that $25, $35 market, the value tour ball, if you will. And honestly, hopefully this kind of puts them on the right track because there have been issues over the last few years with it. So getting into this ball right here, this is of course a three-piece design. It's going to have an iometer cover at $29.99 a dozen. I'm not too big on that. I'm a firm believer that once you get to that $30 price point, it should be urethane or at least some type of proprietary blend. Iometer is a very cheap cover, which means that I'm going to have to hold what's inside this golf ball a lot higher of a standard than what's outside of it because they ended up using such a cheap cover. However, not out of the woods yet. It could end up performing really well. We'll see how that is. Let's look at the design of the golf ball first. So as you can see, that's just the Bridgestone, the B, just black on black with the number there, very simplistic. It kind of just gets the point across. But then if we look over at the alignment tool, again, I didn't really like it. This is the same thing as the E6. I didn't like it on the E6 either. Essentially what it reminds me of is it's just, I don't like that it's going from right to left, and it's just not thick enough. Me being a taller guy, when I look down on my golf ball, I need a really thicker line to see my alignment, and this just doesn't do that, unfortunately. I think that's a little lackluster. They could do better there. Then another thing you'll notice, though, that I do like is that the dimple pattern here. So this is actually a dimple-in-dimple design, a lot like the Top Flight Gamer had. Very unique looking. Now, they're going to try to sell you until there's a bunch of science behind it and they have all these patents on it and stuff, but the numbers will prove that. So for now, we're just looking at the design of it, and it looks cool. It's unique. It does, I mean, you can definitely, when you put two balls next to them, you can see the dimple pattern and it makes it look good. So I do like that. All right, so let's get into the chipping and putting and let's see how we did there. All right, so out here on the chipping green, my results for the Bridgestone E12. So first of all, let's talk about the feel when it comes off of the wedge. It feels really good, honestly. It kind of springs off there pretty well, and it's very soft. I'd put it about a 3 or 4 on the softness scale out of 5. Not anything like a two-piece golf ball where it's just going to completely spring off there and there'll be no feedback. Because this does have 3 layers, you can feel the feedback, but it's not firm by any means. Definitely on the softer side. As far as the checkup on the green, there isn't a lot. There's a little bit. It doesn't exactly pump the brakes, but I would say it kind of lightly presses the pedal. And you can kind of see there on these 3 attempts that although the ball is kind of checking up a little bit, enough to really get the roll I want, but it's not like a big tug or anything like that, so it's not just going to stop on a dime. However, I did like that. As you can see, one of those went in. And what I noticed is there was such forgiveness with it. So even if you kind of accidentally maybe close the face there or leave it open a little too much, the ball doesn't cut right or cut left a lot. It actually continues to go straight, and it actually releases straight, which is a great thing for guys who struggle around the chipping green. So overall, a really good experience. I really enjoyed it. Once you get about 50 yards out, you will get spin with it. It spins just fine. You just got to be able to generate that club speed. Moving into the putter now, the putter feels also really, really well. When it comes off of the club, it does kind of spring just like the wedge does, and there's just that very minimal click. You'll hear it, not as much feel it, but you'll hear it to kind of let you know if you hit it right, and then it just springs off and travels a long way. I did not have an issue getting this ball to really travel at all with the putter. It was super impressive, and honestly, around the green, I really just didn't have many issues at all, so it passes everything with flying colors. All right, cool. So now let's get into some real numbers here with this club. Let's start with the 9-iron, of course. The 9-iron, we've got an 87.8 on ball speed, 124.6, 116.4, 119.8 on the launch angle. Those numbers all equal. They're about in the average zone. The ball speed is definitely low. This ball was definitely a lot firmer than I thought it would be. It's very difficult to get a good hit on it, and it's not that forgiving either, which was really surprising. Usually these budget tour balls are a little more forgiving, but because of how firm it felt, when you hit a little off the toe or a little inside, you lose a lot of ball speed. And then I did happen to look on my Golf Spy as well, and that was one of the main problems they had, was the compression was just so inconsistent. And that's a big deal when you're trying to hit consistent shots, especially when you're someone who might not be a great ball striker yet. 124.6 as far as the distance isn't that bad, actually. That's pretty average. And then 116.4 as far as the carry is pretty average too, a little on the low side. But I think really what's helping it there is it does have a little bit of a higher launch, which is probably getting it a little higher in the air. But overall, those numbers are just a little mediocre. Like I said, at $29.99, I'm going to hold these numbers a little more accountable since they use such a cheap outer cover, and off to a bad start so far. Getting into the 7-iron, as you can see, we got 6,268 on the spin, which is a little higher than normal, but actually, to be honest with you, it's pretty low compared to what I've been getting recently. I have changed how I've hit my 7-iron. I've had to kind of re-look at how I hit it. I used to say 5,800 was the sweet zone, but that's if I'm hitting a draw, and what I've noticed is that when I hit draws in my 7-iron, yes, they look pretty, and yes, they hit the green, but they kind of travel a little too much. They end up going a little farther than I would like, so I've kind of learned to just hit a nice straight shot, get a little more spin so I can hold a green, and that's how I've been testing them, and I've tested the last 5 or 6 balls this way. 62, 68 is actually on the low side of what I usually get, so it didn't spin a lot. And it definitely wasn't a high spinner for any means. And then 104.3 on the ball speed, that's really low. That's really low. And again, the reason this number is low is just because of how inconsistent it was. Is it possible to get 109 ball speed with a 7-iron for me on this ball? Absolutely, if I flush it. If I hit it off the toe, you're looking at 100. And so what happens is it just ends up being such a difference, about 15 yards of difference to be exact. It just ends up being too inconsistent, unfortunately. Looking at the rest of those numbers, 160.9 and 148.2, those distance numbers, again, aren't bad. Honestly, the 17.2, as far as I think that's just a nice mid ball flight. So maybe that's helping it out a little bit, but the ball speed, it just doesn't come off that hard. So maybe it's getting a little extra distance somehow, but the distance numbers are average, but the ball speed's low. Getting into the 5-iron, you're looking at 42, 52 on the spin. Now that's funny because that's actually one of the higher spinning balls I've hit. And then 113.3 on the ball speed. Again, that's one of the lowest I've tested so far with the new Mizuno clubs. Really low on that ball speed. It seems to be across the board. 187.6, that is on the low side. 171.9 on the low side. And then the launch angle was actually kind of like mid to high. So not bad there, but again, if you're not getting the ball speed, that extra height really isn't going to do you a lot of good. So again, all these numbers have been pretty kind of mediocre to average so far. Hopefully the driver can save us with something to give this ball a chance. We'll see. All right, 28.03 on the driver. Not too bad at all. That is on the lower side, so that's good. 239.3 and then 132. So the 239.3 is, it's on the lower side. And then 132 on the ball speed, that's definitely on the lower side. 218.3 on the carry, that's on the low. I mean, yeah, and 14. The launch angle is definitely a low to average. So unfortunately, none of these numbers were really outstanding at all. And again, what this comes from is just, and I talk about it all the time on this channel if you're new here, consistency is key for sure. If you hit an off-center hit, you want your ball to compress just as much as it does on a center-faced hit, or at least close to it. And a lot of the firmer golf balls don't do that. And this one, even being a 61 compression, this golf ball should feel like butter. It should feel really silky soft. It doesn't. It feels firm. I've talked to a lot of guys who use it, and they say it feels firm, and they don't like it. So I'm not really sure what they did with the outer cover there. I'm not sure how, but it just doesn't feel that good. And because of that firmness, it's not forgiving at all. I mean, off-toe hits lose about 15, 20 yards, whether it's with the driver or the 5-iron. I mean, all across the board, if you don't hit it perfect, you're going to lose some yards, and that's going to frustrate you because then it goes from landing light on the green in the middle to landing in front of the green, or, you know, if you actually flush one, you might go off the green. It's just too much of there's just too much of a difference there for me. I don't like that. Now let's get into the durability here. The durability, I would put it like a 4 out of 5. It is pretty good. Now Bridgestone's had good results with their covers as far as that goes. I haven't had any issues with durability. That seems to be the one area that they are just always on the point with. It's no different than here. I mean, you can tell that there's a little scuff here and there, but honestly, it is still in pristine condition. The golf ball I actually hit for the testing, I actually ended up having to test that golf ball 4 times because I had so many issues. I've already talked about them. So it ended up having like 180 shots, and it was still in working order. It was on its last leg, but it was still in working order, so that's really good. Honestly, after I say that, maybe it deserves a 5, but I'm going to keep it at a 4. If you're someone who doesn't lose a lot of golf balls on the golf course, you'll be pleasantly surprised with any Bridgestone ball. They do hold up really well. All right, so let's get into the final, which is, do I recommend it? Is it for a specific audience? I can't recommend it. I can't recommend it for obvious reasons, because around the green, it had an okay performance. The numbers were pretty mediocre. I'm not impressed with the alignment tool. I mean, there's a couple things about it that are interesting, like the dimple and design and, you know, things like that, but I'm not impressed with the price for what you're getting. It's just honestly pretty mediocre. And the problem with this $29.99 price range is it's very, very diluted. I mean, it's a competitive market. A lot of ball companies really stand out, like the Strixon Q-Star Tour, TaylorMade, you know, Soft Response and Tour Response. They're excellent. So if your ball's in this price range and it doesn't really show up and really perform well, it just gets lost in the ether, and that's exactly what this one is. I just wouldn't, with all the other balls out there in this price market that I've tested and that I've given just glowing remarks to, there's no way this ball fits in anywhere in there, and I just wouldn't recommend it to anybody, especially with that firmness. My advice to Bridgestone would be, one, make it a little softer, and honestly, just focus on the numbers. Just focus on the numbers and getting them up. Stop trying to do so much with your patents and your dimple design and your, you know, I feel like they've kind of just veered off here, and they just need to get back to a consistent performing golf ball. Guys, I appreciate you being here as always. Next up, we have the Bridgestone Tour Line golf balls. All 4 of them are already tested. They're already filmed. They're ready to go. It's coming soon. I'm going to be doing one review every 3 days for the next couple weeks. It's going to be awesome. Tons of content coming your way. It was nice I had a week to finally catch up on it, so be on the lookout for those. And I also did throw a couple wild cards in there that weren't Bridgestone as well, so look out for those. They are ones that have been heavily requested, so you can kind of guess there. But overall, guys, I appreciate it as always. Keep watching to keep saving.